West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Speaker Pelosi, which I'm told I can still call you, which feels more natural if that's okay. Speaker Pelosi, there's something else I want to get your response to. And again, it is a minority of the Republicans that we're talking about, not a majority of them. Yeah. But there was heckling like I've never really heard at a State of the Union address. Let's play some of that.
Instead of making the wealthy pay their fair share, some Republicans want Medicare and Social Security to sunset. I'm not saying it's a majority. Let me give you, anybody who doubts it, contact my office. I'll give you a copy. I'll give you a copy of the proposal. That means Congress doesn't vote. Well, I'm glad to see you. No, I tell you, I enjoy conversion.
Now, we should just point out, as a matter of fact, that Republican Senator Rick Scott of Florida has proposed sunsetting all federal programs, which presumably would include Social Security and Medicare. What did you think of the heckling?
I think that they were protesting too much. They knew that they have been identified as putting Medicare and Social Security on the table, and they were trying to dismiss that. But the fact is, it still is part of who they are. They never really supported it to begin with, but rather than go into that, as we go forward, the president has said, how do you intend to lift the debt ceiling, reduce the national debt? Tell us what your programs are. And up until now, they have been talking about it, and their leader of their Senate campaign committee, as you mentioned, Senator Scott, had that as the priority of what they would do. So this was sort of showbiz.
Mm-hmm. It didn't bother you, though, the lack of decorum?
No, well, actually, they were, for them, fairly well behaved from what we see every day of the week in the House of Representatives, unfortunately.
The flip side of that, and we were talking about this before you came on, was that the president interacted and reacted to that in a way that, maybe showed people what he was made of. What did you think of that?
Well, first of all, let me just say thank you for the opportunity to say how great I think the president was tonight. I mean, what do we want in a president? We want judgment. We want values. We want knowledge. Therefore, judgment springing from that. And we want connection to the American people. We want a hopeful message, and that's what he gave us. He proved it by what we have done, but recognizing there's much more to be done. So his interaction, I think, was a sign of his comfort level of all that I just said.
He did talk about his desire to work with Republicans who are now in control of the chamber. Given your experience with dealing with or not dealing with people across the aisle. How realistic is that right now?
Oh, I'm hopeful that that is possible, but all of it depends on the American people. President Lincoln, you've heard me say, he said public sentiment is everything. With it, you can accomplish almost anything. Without it, practically nothing. So the message has to go to the American people. This is what the choices are: chaos or stability. And they have demonstrated how chaotic they can be from the first day of their electing a speaker to their behavior on the floor. On the other hand, there are some in the infrastructure bill. We had 13 Republicans who voted with us, making it bipartisan. With the CHIPS and Science bill, we had 24 Republicans. But nonetheless, bipartisanship.
Still counting votes.
But it was interesting to me because on the CHIPS and Science, they wouldn't vote with us until they saw we were going to win it on our own. And then they saw that that was evident, so they came on board. But we always have to, we know that some of them know what it, they were for the bill the day before the CHIPS and Science, and then the day of, they managed the opposition to it. But we knew that many of them believed in making these chips in America.
And many Republicans we know went home to their districts and touted the bill, even if they voted against it. I did want to ask you.
As the president said about infrastructure and chips, I'll see you at the groundbreaking.
I do want to go back a little bit to what Dana was saying, because this context here of this speech is a president who may run for re-election pretty soon. And you've probably heard by now, a recent poll found about 30% of, only about 30% of Democrats say he should run again. It seems like a lot of Democrats, they're happy with Joe Biden, they think he's done a great job, but they're wondering if he should step to the side. You have made that choice on your own, ushering in a new generation of Democrats into the House. What do you say to that criticism? And do you think that he did anything tonight to quiet some of the restiveness among Democrats about should Joe Biden be the person leading the party into the future?
Well, last weekend I was at the Democratic National Committee meeting in Philadelphia, and I know that there were some who would say perhaps we should consider somebody new. But even in the 30% poll that you said, like 90% of Democrats would be for Joe Biden if he runs. Sure. What they might hope for in this earlier stages of a campaign and what they have decided they would do are actually two different things. They are for Joe Biden. Joe Biden is a person of vision, knowledge, judgment, strategic thinking to get the job done. He was a remarkable 2 years, and again, connects very empathetically with the American people. So I hope he runs. I'm for him if he runs, and I know that the Democrats will fully embrace him. If he runs, it's over.
You don't think there will be any primary challengers to him?
I don't think so.
Dana was talking to AOC earlier today, and she said something, Dana, correct me if I'm wrong, to the effect of she appreciates the primary process. I mean, do you think that there will be any Democrats who jump in to try to challenge Joe Biden on this generational argument? No,
I don't. I think that you have to weigh all of the equities. Yes, the age issue is something that we all have to contend with in every line of work. But I do think that the fact is, weighing the equities, this is a president, 12 million jobs, all of the things that he has done. He has a record unmatched by any recent president. I mean, maybe Franklin Roosevelt, who wasn't recent, but Franklin Roosevelt had 319 Democrats. We had 220 and got done that record of achievement. So he knows how to he has a big vision, a shared vision with America. He is a unifier. He really is. It doesn't go looking for differences. He goes to look for hopeful unity. And he talked about 4 unifying things when he talked about the cancer moonshot. He talked about veterans. He talked about the issues that relate to fentanyl, but also mental health issues that sort of relate to that, where we've made some progress in a unified way. So he's always hopeful about that. So I think he made progress, he gave us hope, he made it clear we have much more to get done. We didn't finish our job, but we really went down the path in a way that demonstrated that he's a president with great judgment. Sometimes that judgment comes with age. I remember when Jerry Brown was running for office when he was young, he said, it's time for a change. Then when he ran for governor the second time, he said, there's no substitute for experience. Experience counts for a lot. I think tonight he showed the energy, the empathy, the hopefulness that a presidential candidate would have. I think it was a triumph for him, for the country, and certainly for the Democrats. People were so excited about his presentation tonight.
It is Wednesday, the 8th of February of 2023, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Will no one rid us of these meddlesome priests? No one. Oh, and it's also, just so you know, that we are also referring to a velvety hollandaise sauce on a lovely egg dish. So there. Alrighty, since we are a salon, and we have repast and something to imbibe with as well. That's what we do. Food for thought. Have a drink. Okay, I don't know where that came from. Speaking of having a drink, there might be a bit of cause for celebration after the State of the Union last night, don't you think? Yeah. Joe going in there and owning the insurgent caucus of I think the insurgent caucus may encompass the whole of the Republican Party. But we'll be magnanimous like old Joe and say not all of them. There's some good ones there too, somewhere. But anyway, I didn't really quite have that on my bingo card that Joe would go in and so thoroughly own them. My God. And are they a titter? They were a titter before. I got so fed up with having Ronnie Jackson and Mike Lee and Pompeo and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Berbert and on and on and on in my Twitter timeline. Never had them before, or rarely. I mean, they might be cited from one of my follows or somebody I was following. Someone I was following or someone was following me, and they did. I would get it sometimes. But that was all I was getting. To get something from my senator here, Merkley, no, can't even do it. Wyden and Merkley, I wasn't getting anything from them since... You know what happened over there at Twitter. Now, some might consider that to be by design. Others say, oh, it's just an accident. Well, you know what? Maybe we don't want him flying human beings up into space. Accidents. I guess he doesn't really care anyway. Look what he does with his AI in his cars. Oh, we'll just run into this median barrier here. I don't know why. The artificial intelligence says do it, and it does. That's why, just as an aside, there was a tragedy out here not terribly long ago, a little bit ago, where a family were in a Tesla, and they drove off of the coastal route known as Devil's Slide near Half Moon Bay along the California coastline. South of the Bay Area. And there was some initial speculation. Tesla, did he have the automatic driving system on? Well, you would want to do that on a coastal route, but you never know, right? Well, it turned out not to be the case, that the family survived. They tumbled down or drove down 300 feet of this cliff face to the rocky beach below with water. There's not much of a beach there. So the ocean's coming in there. But regardless, it was noticed early enough that help was able to get there. And I believe there was maybe some training exercises going on with Coast Guard and others. And so there's a ready-made training session right there. But nonetheless, turns out that the wife had said when they pulled her out that he did it on purpose. So, but I only bring this up is because whenever you mention a Tesla, you wonder, was it human error or driver error? Because the human error would be whoever programmed the AI. So the machine's making a mistake, but a human still did something, groomed, indoctrinated the machine. Anyway, do we really want somebody who keeps making mistakes over on Twitter and has a known record of mistakes in an artificial intelligence. I like automatic intelligence, but artificial intelligence driving system. I need more coffee. And we'll get back to all of that anyway. But do we really want that? And I decided no, I can't take it anymore. I need a breath of fresh air, and Facebook doesn't really do it for me. I don't know. Facebook is, I don't know, a suburban home maybe for good or ill. And so I joined Mastodon. I've been trying to get on Spoutable, but it looks like Boozy has to wait until Thursday because there's such interest. And whenever you're launching something, there's bugs and, little glitches that you want to get rid of, especially when you're going to have a deluge of the burgeoning masses descending upon the site. Yeah. So I'm not convinced I'm going to be able to join on Thursday, even though we'll be able to. There may be such an, like I said, a deluge of all of us who've been waiting, who were so stupid that we didn't pre-register when we had a chance. I missed my chance to be able to migrate all of my followers and follows on Twitter over to Mastodon because right when I found out about it, Elon said, no, we're not going to allow you to do that. What? All right. So Twitter is broken. It kind of bugs me. But I'm over at Mastodon right now, and it's actually a bit of a respite. There's still some engagement, great news, but you don't have this constant just drumbeat from the Republican Party about Joe is the worst liar in the world, and Joe is the worst president in the world, and Democrats are socialist commies, and it's just on. And these are by supposed leaders of the Republican Party in my Twitter timeline. Drunken Nazi Ronnie Jackson. I never had Ronnie Jackson in my timeline before. Jesus. All right. So I don't take my blood pressure on a regular basis, but I could tell that they were increasing. My blood pressure was going up because of these terrible chaos agents. That's what they are. Terrible chaos agents. What else happened? Oh, well, as we continue on about the State of the Union and Joe completely owning them, getting them to agree, no, we're not going to cut Social Security and Medicare. They were clapping for that, but that has been their prime directive. Mike Lee. That little snake Mike Lee sitting there saying, shaking his head, looking around like, we're not trying to get rid of Social Security and Medicare. Who would ever think of that? And he's like on tape saying, we're going to get rid of it. He said, I'm here. This is my prime directive, essentially. Get rid of it. I'm here to get rid of it. All right. So he called him out. Got him to pretty much stand up and agree and clap together. You never saw that. Well, first of all, you never saw heckling like you did last night during Trump. because he was too busy heckling everybody else. Oh, man. And, so apparently, according to Laverne Spicer and this Bridget, whatever her name is, Bridget Gabriel, and Nick Adams, and it goes on and on and on. All these people I never had to contend with. Rarely. I mean, they rarely showed up. Now they're the only ones there. That's not to say that, look, I actually have some great people that I follow that show up. But a lot of people that I would normally see and have their recommendations, RTs and whatnot come through, I never see unless I go to their page now. This For You bullshit that Ellen has imposed on us, it's not for me. But all of these that I mentioned, it's just a constant drumbeat about, America's going to hell in a handbasket. And I think that's not going to play too well after a while in Peoria. I don't think so. Because Americans don't like to think that they're living in a hellhole. All right? And, some people say, I moved away from a hellhole so I can move here. And I go, where did you move from? And I'm thinking, hellhole means is that they felt that they had to live around, brown people and black people and Asian people and all these people. They're not Americans. Yeah, they are. That's what makes America great, because it is, as Joe said, an idea. An idea about personal freedom. And with personal freedom comes responsibility, and I'm looking at these so-called leaders heckling Joe like banshees. Banshee monkeys. But I got to say, the banshee monkeys have a lot more societal restraint than what we saw last night. So I shouldn't be dissing the banshee monkey. I apologize. They're much more socially adept. They have a proper hierarchy, apparently, too, that they adhere to. All right. So I think, I really do, for those who watch the State of the Union, because people don't do that. They'll watch the Super Bowl. Hundreds of millions watch the Super Bowl. You're lucky to get 40 million to watch the State of the Union. 40 to 60 million, that's still a sizable number. But I think that those who viewed the events last night saw, who the adults in the room really are. I like Feisty Joe. I do. All right. And I like the little digs. He's been around. Yeah. Go ahead and vote against my infrastructure bill. I'll see you at the groundbreaking. Because they always take credit for it. It's funny how they do that, too. That was one of the reasons why they didn't want America to see them, at least visibly out there publicly saying, we're going to get rid of it. Not in that venue. But it was quite lovely to see them all standing and saying, no, we're not gonna get rid of Social Security and Medicare. We're not. USA. Okay, good on Joe. Okay, well, what do we have in store for you here in this salon that we call West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, here in the Bistro Cafe, as we begin, Democrats won control of the Pennsylvania House in a special election, ending a dozen years of GOP rule. Virginia Senate Democrats rejected 3 Youngkin appointees. We're on a roll. And Indiana lawmakers look to broaden birth control access. After the break, we move to the chef's table where 5 priests were sentenced to 10 years for conspiracy to commit democracy in Nicaragua. And archaeologists have uncovered a rare 14th century Spanish synagogue in the southern town of Utrera. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln, and we thank her for doing so. Across the page from that chat room link, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, it really helps continue this powerhouse of resistance, being the powerhouse of resistance that it has been for so many years because of your generosity. If you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink, for instance, and maybe send those funds our way once a month, thus becoming a recurring Patreon, that helps us really put a dent in the amount of money we have to send out to pay our bills. And that way we keep this powerhouse of resistance resisting powerfully. And we thank you once again for your generosity. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter and Mastodon, you can do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thank you. Follow me on Twitter and Mastodon, and hopefully soon Spoutable at Justice Putnam. And I post the show notes and links diary. I know everybody's calling them stories, but they're diaries. I'm old school, okay? Anyway, I post the show notes and links diary over at Daily Co's 10 minutes before showtime, and that's where you can find the actual articles in which we are referencing. Follow the show on Twitter. I'll get a Mastodon account soon. I will, I promise. But you can follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and please do pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is by Mark Scolforo from the Associated Press. Democrats won control of the Pennsylvania House in special elections yesterday, Tuesday, wresting partial power from Republicans for the first time in a dozen years in a competitive swing state. Democrats won all three vacant Pittsburgh area House seats to claim a slim edge over Republicans, finally securing a majority they first appeared to have won in last November's general election. Republicans still hold the Senate, creating a political division that could make it difficult for lawmakers to send priority bills to new Democratic Governor Josh Shapiro. The special elections capped several months of electoral drama. Republicans held a comfortable 113 to 90 House majority last year, but once a decade, redistricting and strong performance in statewide races helped Democrats flip just enough seats in the fall election to win a 102 to 101 majority in the House, or so it seemed. 3 of those Democratic seats quickly became vacant, casting uncertainty over who actually controlled the chamber. And this is true in any type of election, high or small. So let's delve into how these things can happen. Representative Tony DeLuca died of cancer in October, shortly before winning re-election. Representative Summer Lee resigned after also winning a congressional election, and Representative Austin Davis quit before being sworn in as lieutenant governor. That left Republicans with more people in the House than Democrats and led to a political impasse. The chamber elected Democratic Representative Mark Rossi as Speaker as a new session began on January 3rd, but only after Republican leaders and a few other GOP members joined with all Democrats on the vote. The House has been frozen since Rossi took over and has not passed internal operating rules, assigned members to committees, or approved any legislation. Rossi said last week he wants to retain the speakership when Democrats convene with their newly elected members. At a news conference in Pittsburgh late yesterday, the Democratic floor leader, Representative Joanna McClinton, said the 3 Democratic candidates had been tossed into the mixer really quickly to compete In the special elections, she noted Democrats have been in the House minority for 24 of the past 28 years. But Clinton wants a speakership, but said she did not want to get ahead of the days to come as the election results are fully tabulated and certified, asking people to please stay tuned to see what the will of this body will be when the House returns to voting session. A few minutes after McClinton was done speaking, the clerk's office sent out an email notice of House floor sessions to resume in 2 weeks. Democrats had been expected to win Tuesday's special election because they had easily won the same seats last fall. DeLuca's former seat was won by Democrat Joe McAndrew, a business owner, age 32 by the way, who is a former House Democratic staffer and the former executive director of Allegheny County's Democratic Committee. Lee's former seat was won by Abigail Salisbury, age 40, a lawyer and Democratic member of the Swissvale Borough Council. Matthew Gurgley, a Democrat who works for the McKeesport city government, was elected to succeed Davis. The special elections occurred only after the courts rejected an attempt by the House Republican floor leader, Representative Brian Cutler, to prevent 2 of the contests from being decided. When the newly elected lawmakers take office, the House may still be 1 member short of its complement. That's because Republican Representative Linda Schlegel Culver won a special election January 31st to fill a vacant state Senate seat. Sarah Rankin and Denise Lavoie of the Associated Press bring us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Virginia Senate Democrats voted yesterday, Tuesday, to reject several appointees of Glenn Youngkin, including the state health commissioner. The chamber approved resolutions containing dozens of Youngkin appointees after the names of those to whom they objected. Health Commissioner Dr. Colin Green, Parole Board Member Stephen Buck, and Education Board Member Suparna Duda were stripped out. Another Youngkin appointee to the University of Virginia Board of Visitors, Bert Ellis, survived an attempt removal after 2 Democrats joined with Republicans to keep him. The resolutions now move to the GOP-controlled House, which could attempt to restore the appointees who have already been serving in their roles. Youngkin said the senators were attacking the integrity of, quote, 3 highly qualified members of my administration in an appalling show of partisanship. Green, the health commissioner, was reprimanded by the Board of Health last year for remarks in an interview with the Washington Post in which he called gun violence a Democratic talking point and questioned the role of structural racism in health outcomes, including maternal and infant mortality rates. Youngkin previously expressed disappointment at those remarks and said they did not represent the view of his administration. They were the focus of much of Tuesday's debate, though Democratic Senator Jennifer McClellan also said concerns about Green also extended to his impact on the health department staff. His leadership is having a chilling effect on the work that the Legislative Black Caucus has done to address racism as a public health crisis, McClellan said. Republican Steve Newman, a senator there, defended Green as a remarkable leader with an impressive resume that included 30 years in the U.S. Army. GOP Senator Amanda Chase, who raised objections about Green's refusal to embrace the use of the anti-parasitic drug ivermectin for COVID-19, joined Democrats in voting to block him. Repis, a health department spokesperson, referred a request for comment to the governor's office, which said Green had ably led Virginia out of the pandemic. Buck, a former state and federal prosecutor, was nominated by Youngkin to the Virginia Parole Board in April. Senate Democrats said they had reviewed parole board votes and found Buck voted to grant parole in only 7 of the approximately 1,500 cases he'd heard. That led members to be concerned that he apparently doesn't believe inmates deserve parole, Senator Scott Surovell said. There was no immediate response to the AP for comment sent to Buck via the parole board's website. Democrats voted to remove Duda in part over what they said were concerns she was unqualified due to a lack of work history in education. Duda chaired a coalition called Educators for Youngkin during the governor's 2021 campaign and spoke at his inauguration. She was apparent leader of the Coalition for TJ, an advocacy group that sued over a controversial new admissions policy at the highly selective Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology in Fairfax County. Newman defended Duda as a successful woman of color with experience teaching others about IT software development. Senate Democrats also reported receiving emails from Ginny Thomas, conservative activist and wife of Justice Clarence Thomas, urging them to support Duda. Rogers of the AP brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Indiana lawmakers this session are eyeing ways to expand contraceptive access to prevent unintended pregnancies in the state after the Republican-led legislature pushed through an abortion ban this past summer. A House committee yesterday, Tuesday, considered a proposal that could permit pharmacists to prescribe birth control hours before state senators approved a bill that would allow Medicaid recipients same-day access to long-acting reversible contraceptives. But while Indiana's abortion ban is on hold, pending a decision from the state Supreme Court, lawmakers are looking to bolster services that would prevent pregnancies in the first place. The House legislation regarding over-the-counter birth control was developed after our special session last year. Bill author, Republican Representative Elizabeth Rowray, said in Tuesday's committee hearing, all women co-authors on the bill, which allow pharmacists to opt out of authorizing the medication if they object on religious or ethical grounds, are Republican Representatives Sharon Niequist, Ann Vermillion, and Democratic Rep. Rita Fleming. We thought that having access to hormonal contraceptives as readily available as possible would be one step in making sure we didn't have those unintended pregnancies, Rowray said on Tuesday. An amendment that would have allowed over-the-counter birth control fell short by one vote this summer. Fleming tried to grant that access through a spending bill, which will allocate additional funding this year to state agencies that support low-income women and children that passed alongside the abortion ban. Senator Shelley Yoder, who authored the Senate bill that passed 49 to zip, said Tuesday the proposal would allow long-acting reversal contraceptives such as intrauterine devices to be transferred between Medicaid patients. If a Medicaid patient does not return after 12 weeks for the device, a medical provider can reissue that contraceptive to a different patient. This could happen during a day of appointment rather than the usual follow-up visit. Providers do not typically keep the implant devices on the shelf due to their high costs of up to $1,000 per device. A Senate Public Health Committee is also scheduled today to hear a bill that would give women the option of having a long-acting reversible contraceptive device implanted after giving birth. All right, let us now get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, body horror meets soul horror. When evaluating a film like Infinity Pool or maybe anything from the Cronenbergs, this is the third and first wide release from the younger Brandon, the question you have to ask is whether the violence and gore are in service of some point or aesthetic. A popular theme in cinema and prestige TV these days, think the Westworld series or The Menu, is the depravity often associated with money and power, and what that says about the human condition. In this one, we meet second-rate novelist James and his wife with the money M, Alexander Skarsgård and Cleopatra Coleman, as they're beginning a vacation in a third-world country, which is creepily both tropical and Soviet. We also meet Mia Goth's show-stealing character Gabby, who we first think is buttering James up because she's attracted to him. She may be, but we soon find out that her motivations run deeper. After a night of partying, James and M, Gabby and her husband, leave the compound, running over and killing a local, after which they find out that in that country, the penalty for such a crime is execution or, and this is the flourish that distinguishes this movie, paying to have a double cloned, whom the wealthy culprit can then watch be executed. James is initially intrigued with this custom, which we learn has given rise to a small cult of Westerners who essentially get off on it, staying in country to commit horrible crimes and experiencing the so-called consequences. Way past the bad places where some of the characters from Westworld end up, in the observation of their own torment in Infinity Pool, we have metaphorical baggage aplenty with which to engage, and if you're not squeamish, the over-the-top close-up carnage does drive it home. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
Wake up and text. Text and eat. Text and catch the bus. Text and miss your stop. Wait. Text and be late to work.
Sorry, I'm late.
Text and work. Text and pretend to work. Text and act surprised when someone calls you out for not working.
Who, me?
Text and meet up with a friend you haven't seen in forever.
Hi.
Oh, hey.
Text and complain that they're on their phone the whole time. Text and listen to them complain that you're on your phone the whole time. Text and whatever. But when you get behind the wheel, give your phone to a passenger. Put it in the glove box. Just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Welcome to 60 Second Civics, the daily podcast of the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. The Declaration of Independence states that all men are created equal, and that they have the unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Nevertheless, slavery was firmly entrenched in the American economy by 1776. At the Philadelphia Convention in 1787, the framers successfully avoided using the word slave in the Constitution, but the document contains many provisions that protected slavery and the interests of slaveholders, such as the 3/5 Compromise and the Fugitive Slave Clause. These and other compromises were made to ensure that the Southern states would join the Union. But doing so would set the stage for a brutal civil war that almost ended the American experiment and would continue centuries of discrimination against African Americans, the effects of which still impact the nation today. Nevertheless, the story of the more than 400 years since slavery was first introduced into the 13 colonies is one of expanding rights and greater equality for all Americans. Over the next 28 days of Black History Month, 60 Second Civics will explore this story, and we will learn about African Americans whose lives and accomplishments advanced the great cause of liberty and equality in the United States. That's all for today's podcast, 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
Who is to blame for the death of Tyre Nichols?
I'm Floyd Patterson II, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute with American Civil Liberties Union attorney Bill Newman.
Let's start, but not stop, with the 5 police officers who inflicted grievous injury when they kicked and punched and used a baton to smash his face, which killed him. And then there are the other Memphis police officers nearby who failed to intervene. Aren't they morally culpable? How about legally? And what about the supervisory and training personnel? Where were they, and what did they do or not do? After all, we're talking about members of an elite strike force unit called Scorpion with a deserved reputation for aggressive tactics, who stopped Mr. Nichols' car and yanked him out of it. And what about the emergency medical technicians who, after arriving on the scene, did nothing to help Mr. Nichols for 19 minutes? No taking of vital signs, no physical examination, no oxygen, nothing. The killing of Tyre Nichols is not a story told in black and white. The 5 officers accused of 7 serious felonies, including second-degree murder and kidnapping, all are black, as is the police chief, as are 58% of the police department's commissioned officers. A full recounting of the killing of Tyre Nichols is yet to be told, but the outline of the story is clear. It is a story about failure, about human failure, and about systemic failure as well.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the American Civil Liberties Union because freedom can't defend itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1974. That was the day that a 3-man American astronaut crew returned to Earth from an 84-day mission at the Skylab. They were the first crew to spend so long in low Earth orbit up until that time. The crew also returned with a different kind of first. They had launched the first space strike in history. The all-rookie crew was scheduled for an arduous work schedule at the space station. When one member fell ill, they began to fall behind schedule on their long list of tasks. From the ground, NASA Mission Control urged them to catch up by working through meals and scheduled rest times. Tensions mounted as the 3 men were monitored at every moment. The commander of the trip tried to explain the crew's exhaustion, saying, "On the ground, I don't think we would be expected to work 16 hours a day for 85 days. And so I really don't see why we should even try to do it up here." 6 weeks into the trip, the Skylab 4 crew had had enough. They turned off the communication radio connecting them to Earth. They took an unscheduled day off. When the communication link came back on, the commander issued the group's demands, saying, "We need more time to rest. We need a schedule that's not so packed. We don't want to exercise after a meal. We need to get things under control." NASA agreed to stop pushing so hard. The first space strike was over, and the mission went forward on better terms.
Ground control to Major Tom. Ground control to Major Tom. Take your protein.
Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 39 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high in the mid-50s, partly cloudy throughout the day, winds light and variable. Clear to partly cloudy overnight with lows in the low to mid-30s, winds remaining light and variable. And then sunny skies tomorrow, highs in the low 60s. Winds will be out of the south at 5 to 10 miles per hour, though it does look like we'll have rain developing later in the evening for tomorrow. Pollen is still rated as none here in the little village of Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is good at 27 parts per million, and that daytime UV index has ticked up one notch into the moderate range at level 3. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.51 inches. Visibility is at 6 miles, and relative humidity is at 92%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 46 degrees and sunny. Paris is 44 and sunny. Rome is 50 degrees and fair. Kyiv is 24 and fair. Kabul is 32 and mostly cloudy. Hong Kong is 65 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 43 degrees and clear. Sydney, Australia is 67 with rain showers. San Francisco, California is 47 degrees and fair, and New York, New York is 48 degrees Fahrenheit and partly cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Associated Press staff brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. A Nicaraguan court has sentenced 4 Roman Catholic priests to 10 years in prison on conspiracy charges stemming from long-standing government allegations that the church backed illegal pro-democracy protests. A human rights group in the Central American country quickly denounced the sentences that were handed down on Monday and made known by lawyers of the Legal Defense Unit yesterday, Tuesday. It was the latest chapter in a crackdown on the church by President Daniel Ortega. On Sunday, a 5th priest was sentenced to 10 years in prison on the same charges. The priests were convicted in closed-door trials in which government-appointed defenders acted as the priest's attorneys. Those sentenced had worked with the Matagalpa Bishop Rolando Alvarez, and one had been rector of the privately run Juan Pablo II University in the capital of Managua. Alvarez is under house arrest on charges of conspiracy and damaging the Nicaraguan government and society, and is set to be sentenced soon. 2 seminary students, and a cameraman who worked for the diocese were also sentenced. All 6 of the defendants were arrested last year, and all were stripped of their right to ever hold political office. The Nicaraguan Human Rights Center described the sentences as a legal aberration. Alvarez, the bishop, had been a key religious voice in discussions of Nicaragua's future since 2018, when a wave of protests against Ortega's government led to a sweeping crackdown on opponents. On Sunday, Reverend Oscar Daniel Benavides, a priest in Mulacucu in northern Nicaragua, was sentenced for conspiracy and spreading false information. He had been arrested on the 14th of August. The government arrested dozens of opposition leaders in 2021, including potential presidential candidates. They were sentenced to prison last year in quick trials that were closed to the public.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Even more anonymous staff at the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Archaeologists in the southern Spanish town of Utrera confirmed yesterday, Tuesday, they had uncovered a 14th century synagogue hidden within a building that was later converted into a church, a hospital, and most recently a bar. Archaeologist Miguel Ángel de Dios told journalists that the first thing to confirm is the presence of a prayer room. Following years of analysis of the building's walls and floor, the fundamental elements of the synagogue, such as the entrance hall, he said, or the perimeter benches that have emerged in this survey, now confirm that we are indeed in the prayer hall. The only hint of the Jewish temple's existence came from a priest and historian, Rodrigo Caro, who wrote in 1604 that a hospital now stood on a site where Jews used to pray. There are only a tiny handful of medieval synagogues surviving in Spain, including in the cities of Toledo and Cordoba. The Utrera synagogue was converted into a church in the 16th century, de Dios added, when all traces of its Jewish past were erased. His team now hopes to identify the pulpit and a bath used for rituals. We now have the scientific certainty that we are standing in a medieval synagogue. The Utrean mayor said the state of conservation of the synagogue being partial is nevertheless exceptional, he added. Attracting tourists interested in Spain's Jewish past has become a key focus for towns with historic traces in recent years. In 1492, Spain's Catholic monarchs, Queen Isabella I of Castile and King Ferdinand II of Aragon, decreed that Spain's 200,000-strong Jewish population convert to Christianity or be expelled. Spain has attempted in recent years to make amends for what the government termed this historic mistake. In 2015, the Spanish government allowed the descendants of exiled Sephardic Jews to apply for Spanish citizenship, with 132,226 people doing so. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.